What's up guys, BP here, and today we're going to be looking at a Kurzgesagt video that I think is very interesting. And if you don't know who Kurzgesagt is, they are a popular YouTube channel that teaches basically science and space information. It's basically like middle school all over again, plus some really cool animations. And yeah, so it's like middle school on a YouTube platform, which I really enjoy. However, the only problem I have with them is that they basically have the popular worldview that everyone else shares, which I don't. I don't have a evolutionist worldview. I have a creationist worldview. So we're going to be looking at some of the things that they cover in this particular video to try to clear some things up, and hopefully this will enlighten you as to what life is and what death is. Okay, now that I've explained in a nutshell who Kurzgesagt is, let's go ahead and get into this first part of their video.
Life is fundamentally different from dead stuff, or is it? Physicist Erwin Schrödinger defined life this way: living things avoid decay into disorder and equilibrium. What does this mean? Let's pretend that your download folder is the universe. It started orderly and got more and more chaotic over time. By investing energy, you can create order and clean it up. This is what living things do. But what is life? Every living thing on this planet is made of cells. Basically, a cell is a protein-based robot too small to feel or experience anything. It has the properties we just assigned to life. It has a wall that separates it from the surroundings, creating order. It regulates itself and maintains a constant state. It eats stuff to stay alive, it grows and develops, it reacts to the environment, and it's subject to evolution, and it makes more of itself.
So basically they define life as living things that avoid decay into disorder and equilibrium, and I kind of disagree with that definition. I wanted to kind of spruce this definition up a little bit by adding in what American law says about what life is. And it says, quote, in determining the meaning of any act of Congress or of any ruling, regulation, or interpretation of the various administrative bureaus and agencies of the United States, the words person, human being, child, and individual shall include every infant member of the species Homo sapiens who is born alive at any stage of development. And it goes on to kind of further explain what life is in subsection B, but basically I'm not going to read that. So in summary, it just means that when a person is born, upon their first breath, they are essentially considered a living soul or a human being or living or a life. Basically like what Genesis said, that when God breathed into Adam, he became a living soul. So that's kind of what we would define a living soul is, or something that is living. And so for the sake of simplicity, we're going to define life as human life, because as far as we know, human beings are the only ones who have self-awareness and consciousness. Now, what about animals? Are they living things? Well, of course they are, but think of it like a video game, okay? In certain video games, you have what's called NPCs, which are non-player characters, and they have certain purposes and roles that they serve in that video game, but they're not actually controlled by a player of any sort. And so animals, in this case, in our universe, they may serve some sort of purpose, like, being a pet or your companion or whatever. But in essence, they are not living things with souls. They might be living, yes, but they're not, obviously, they don't have souls like we do.
For Charles Darwin, humans drew a line between themselves and the rest of living things. There was something magical about us that made us special. Once we had to accept we are, like every living being, a product of evolution, we drew a different line.
Now, here's where I draw the line with Kurzgesagt, is that they try to say that human life is no more important than anything else. So like your life is not any more important than a fly on the wall. And that's just not so. I mean, human life is very important because, well, we have consciousness and we have a soul. And when we die, it's not all over. We actually go somewhere. We never cease to exist. We always exist somewhere, some way, somehow. Now, Kurzgesagt makes a couple of assumptions with its video. And the first assumption that it makes is that human life is not any more important than anything else, like a fly on the wall. The second assumption it makes is that evolution is the cause and sole reason for all life, and especially human life. However, the first real problem to the idea of evolution being responsible for any life is the very analogy that they gave about the universe being a sort of download folder on your computer, which is unorganized and complex. They then go on to say that if you add energy, you can essentially create life. Well, that right there explains how life began. It was created. Because if it evolved, those files in that download folder would simply remain unorganized. And even if you did try to use something with some kind of intelligence, say like a chimpanzee, to try to organize the folder, he would likely just smash all of the buttons on the keyboard and just click randomly without any organization or thought ever coming from it whatsoever. And then what's worse is that evolution it goes a step further than using the chimpanzee illustration, and says that if you leave a computer by itself with a keyboard and a mouse and leave it there for billions of years with nothing of intelligence to try to create something, that somehow it will assemble itself or create itself into something beautiful or poetic, like a YouTube video like mine. Just kidding. My videos aren't that beautiful and poetic, but you get my point.
And here's another question for you. If everything in the universe is made of the same stuff, does this mean everything in the universe is dead, or that everything in the universe is alive? That it's just a question of complexity? Does this mean we can never die because we were never alive in the first place? Is life and death an irrelevant question, and we haven't noticed it yet? Is it possible we are much more part of the universe around us than we thought?
Now here we see that Kurzgesagt makes the conclusion at the end that we are all somehow part of the universe, much more than we think. And it kind of sounds like what Jim Carrey said in one of his speeches.
I was no longer a fragment of the universe. I was the universe.
Now, as silly as it may sound, people really do believe that they are part of the universe, or they are the universe, as if saying that they are God. And before I go any further, let me just explain that society has rejected the traditional view of Christianity and the traditional teachings of religion to embrace this new modern theology of the universe. And if you just put it out there in the universe what you want, the universe will give you whatever is in the desire of your heart. And this is just modern theology and rejection of Christianity and rejection of the scriptures. But I'm here to tell you that Jesus is God, not the universe. Jehovah is God. The great I am is God. And you see, my friend, God became a man. Man never became God. It will never happen. It's impossible.
But what about AI, artificial intelligence? By our most common definitions, we are very close to creating artificial life in computers. It's just a question of time before the technology we build gets there.
And lastly, if you didn't notice it, Kurzgesagt tries to explain that eventually humanity will be able to create life with artificial intelligence. But wouldn't that just prove that it takes intelligence to create AI? It's not evolved. It's not a process of evolution. It's a process of creation. It's no different than taking a typewriter and a piece of paper and putting it in the same room and expecting a masterpiece of a book to come out as a result of evolution. It's no different. It takes intelligence. It takes someone to create that book, that piece of art. It takes human ingenuity. It takes intelligence to create a masterpiece. It takes a musician to create music. It takes a creator to create something.